What is Psychology Class 11? Understanding Psychology. Introduction. People often respond to the question of what psychology is with answers like wanting to know what others are thinking, knowing oneself, or understanding why people dream. Ancient traditions, especially Indian philosophical traditions, deal with questions about human nature, such as why people behave the way they do and what changes they should make to achieve happiness. Psychological knowledge aims to contribute to human well-being. Psychologists explore questions like what experiences turn young men into terrorists or what motivates individuals like Major H.P.S. Ahluwalia to climb Mount Everest despite physical challenges. Modern psychology also studies micro-level phenomena like consciousness and attention. What is psychology? Psychology is difficult to define because of its evolving nature and the range of phenomena it studies. Initially, it was derived from the Greek words psyche, soul, and logos, science or study. Today, psychology is a scientific discipline that deals with the processes underlying human experience and behavior at individual, dyadic, group, and organizational levels, with biological and social bases. Psychology is formally defined as a science that studies mental processes, experiences, and behavior in different contexts. It uses methods of biological and social sciences to obtain data systematically and organizes this data as knowledge. Mental process. Internal states of consciousness or awareness. Used when we think, solve problems or remember something. Reflected in brain activity but not identical to it. Examples include remembering, learning, knowing, perceiving, and feeling. Experiences. Subjective in nature, embedded in our awareness or consciousness. Influenced by internal and external conditions. Psychologists study experiences like pain, bereavement, and positive feelings in romantic encounters, as well as esoteric experiences like those of a meditating yogi or a drug addict. Behavior. Responses or reactions we make, or activities we engage in, can be simple or complex, short or enduring. Overt behaviors are outwardly seen or sensed, while covert behaviors are internal, associated with or triggered by stimuli in the environment or internal changes. Both stimulus and response can be internal or external. Psychology as a discipline. Psychology studies behavior, experiences, and mental processes to understand how the mind works and how mental processes result in different behaviors. Psychologists minimize biases by making their analyses scientific and objective or by explaining behavior from the point of view of the experiencing person. Self-reflection and analysis of conscious experiences are also considered important. Psychology is a relatively young science, with the first laboratory of psychology founded in 1879 in Leipzig. Its nature as a science remains a matter of debate due to emerging interfaces with other disciplines. Psychology as a natural science. Psychology has roots in philosophy but developed through the application of the scientific method. Science emphasizes objectivity, which requires consensus on the definition of a concept and how it can be measured. Psychologists have developed theories of learning, memory, attention, perception, motivation, and emotion using this approach. The evolutionary approach has also influenced the explanation of psychological phenomena like attachment and aggression. Psychology as a social science. Psychology studies human behavior in socio-cultural context, focusing on humans as social beings. Consider the story of Ranjita and Shabnam. This example illustrates how individuals grow up in different families under complex social and cultural conditions. Psychology aims to understand behavior and experience in the context of society and culture, focusing on individuals and communities in relation to their socio-cultural and physical environment. Understanding mind and behavior. The mind was once a taboo subject in psychology because it could not be defined in concrete behavioral terms or located. Neuroscientists like Sperry and physicists like Penrose have given the mind the respect it deserves. While the mind cannot exist without the brain, it is a separate entity. Patients with surgically removed occipital lobes, responsible for vision, could still respond correctly to visual cues. An athlete who lost his arm still felt its presence and movements. A young man with brain injury claimed his parents were replaced by duplicates. These cases indicate that the mind remained intact despite brain damage. Recent studies in affective neuroscience show the relationship between mind and behavior. Positive visualization and emotions can bring about significant changes in bodily processes. Popular notions about psychology. Every day, people act like psychologists with ready explanations and theories about human behavior. However, these common sense theories may not be true when investigated scientifically and are often based on hindsight. Example: common sense says, out of sight, out of mind, and distance makes the heart grow fonder, which are contradictory. Scientific knowledge generated by psychology often goes against common sense. Dweck, 1975, found that children who were given easy problems and always succeeded gave up faster when faced with failure compared to those who experienced both success and failure and were taught to attribute failure to lack of effort. Empirical studies have disproven common sense notions like men being more intelligent than women or women causing more accidents than men. Psychological studies also show that performance can improve in front of a large audience if one has practiced well. Evolution of psychology. Psychology has a short history as a modern discipline, influenced by ancient philosophy. The formal beginning of modern psychology is traced back to 1879 when Wilhelm Wundt established the first experimental laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. Timeline of psychology: 1879, Wilhelm Wundt establishes the first psychology laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. 1890, William James publishes Principles of Psychology. 1895, functionalism is formulated as a system of psychology. 1900, Sigmund Freud develops psychoanalysis. 1904, Ivan Pavlov wins the Nobel Prize for his work on digestive system and classical conditioning. 1905, intelligence test developed by Binet and Simon. 1912, Gestalt psychology is born in Germany. 1916, first psychology department in India at Calcutta University. Historical timeline of psychology. Key developments: 1915, first psychology laboratory established at Calcutta University. 1916, first department of psychology started at Calcutta University. 1922, psychology included in Indian Science Congress Association. 1922, Indian Psychoanalytical Association founded. 1924, Indian Psychological Association founded. 1924, John B. Watson publishes Behaviorism, foundational book for behaviorism. 1928, first textbook on social psychology published by N. Sengupta and Radhakamal Mukherjee. 1938, Department of Applied Psychology established at Calcutta University. 1949, Psychological Research Wing of the Defence Science Organisation of India established. 1951, Carl Rogers publishes Client-Centered Therapy, a cornerstone of humanistic psychology. 1953, B. E. Skinner publishes Science and Human Behavior, Reinforcing Behaviorism. 1954, Abraham Maslow publishes Motivation and Personality, another key work in humanistic psychology. 1954, Bureau of Psychology established in Allahabad. 1955, National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, established in Bangalore. 1962, Hospital for Mental Diseases in Ranchi established. 1973, Konrad Lorenz and Nico Tinbergen win Nobel Prize for work on animal behavior. 1978, Herbert Simon wins the Nobel Prize for work on decision-making. 1981, David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel win the Nobel Prize for research on vision cells in the brain. 1981, Roger Sperry wins the Nobel Prize for split brain research. 1986, Durganand Simha publishes Psychology in a Third World Country, The Indian Experience. 1989, National Academy of Psychology, NAOP, India founded. 1997, National Brain Research Centre, NBRC, established at Gurgaon, Haryana. 2002, Daniel Kahneman wins the Nobel Prize for research on human judgment and decision-making under uncertainty. 2005, Thomas Schelling wins the Nobel Prize for applying game theory to understanding conflict and cooperation in economic behavior. Cognitive perspective. The cognitive perspective emphasizes how we understand the world. Cognition, the process of knowing including thinking, understanding, perceiving, memorizing, and problem solving. Some cognitive psychologists view the mind as an information processing system, comparing it to a computer that receives, processes, transforms, stores, and retrieves information. Constructivism. Modern cognitive psychology often embraces constructivism. Constructivism, the view that human beings actively construct their minds through exploration of the physical and social world. Piaget's theory of child development is considered a constructivist theory. Social and cultural processes. Russian psychologist Vygotsky suggested that the human mind develops through social and cultural processes. The mind is culturally constructed through interactions between adults and children. Development of psychology in India. Philosophical roots. Indian philosophical traditions focus on mental processes like consciousness, self, mind-body relations, cognition, perception, and reasoning. However, these philosophical roots have not significantly influenced the development of modern psychology in India, which remains dominated by Western psychology. Modern era. The modern era of Indian psychology began at the Department of Philosophy at Calcutta University. 1915, first syllabus of experimental psychology introduced. 1915, first psychology laboratory established. 1916, first department of psychology started. 1938, Department of Applied Psychology established. Key figures. Dr. N. Sengupta, trained in the experimental tradition of Wundt, influenced early experimental psychology in Calcutta. Professor G. Bose, trained in Freudian psychoanalysis, established the Indian Psychoanalytical Association in 1922. Expansion and indigenization. Durganand Simha identified 4 phases in the history of modern psychology in India. 1. Emphasis on experimental, psychoanalytic, and psychological testing research, reflecting Western developments. 2. Expansion of psychology into different branches, with Indian psychologists using Western ideas to understand the Indian situation. 3. Problem-oriented research focused on addressing issues in Indian society after the 1960s. 4.1. Indigenization in the 1970s, rejecting Western frameworks and developing culturally and socially relevant understandings. Current trends. Psychology in India now emphasizes developing psychological principles rooted in the Indian social and cultural context. There is also growing research involving neurobiological and health sciences. Psychology is applied in diverse professional areas, including clinical psychology in hospitals, HRD and advertising in corporate organizations, sports directorates, development sector, IT industry. Fields of specialization. Cognitive psychology involved in the acquisition, storage, investigates mental processes, manipulation, and transformation of information. Major processes include attention, perception, memory, reasoning, problem solving, decision making, and language. Utilizes experiments in laboratory settings and ecological approaches to study cognitive processes in natural settings. Collaborates with neuroscientists and computer scientists. Biological psychology focuses on the relationship between behavior and the physical system, including the brain, nervous system, immune system, and genetics. Collaborates with neuroscientists, zoologists, and anthropologists. Neuropsychology is a related field. Researchers study the role of neurotransmitters and use technologies like EEG, PET, and fMRI. Developmental psychology studies social and psychological changes across the lifespan, from conception to old age. Focuses on biological, socio-cultural, and environmental factors that influence psychological characteristics. Collaborates with anthropologists, educationists, neurologists, social workers, and counselors. Social psychology explores how people are affected by their social environments and how they think about and influence others. Interested in topics such as attitudes, conformity, interpersonal attraction, helping behavior, prejudice, aggression, social motivation, and intergroup relations. Cross-cultural and cultural psychology examines the role of culture in understanding behavior, thought, and emotion. Assumes that human behavior is a product of both biological potential and culture. Studies behavior in its socio-cultural context. Environmental psychology studies the interaction of physical factors, temperature, humidity, pollution, natural disasters, on human behavior. Investigates the influence of physical arrangements of the workplace on health, emotional state, and interpersonal relations. Examines the relationship between human behavior and issues like waste disposal, population explosion, and energy conservation. Health psychology focuses on the role of psychological factors, age, stress, anxiety, in the development, prevention, and treatment of illness. Areas of interest include stress and coping, psychological factors and health, patient-doctor relationships, and health-enhancing factors. Clinical and counseling psychology deals with the treatment and prevention of psychological disorders such as anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and substance abuse. Counseling aims to improve everyday functioning by helping people solve problems and cope with challenging situations. Psychiatrists can prescribe medications and administer electroshock treatments, while clinical psychologists cannot. Industrial, organizational psychology deals with the workplace, focusing on both workers and the organizations that employ them. Concerned with training employees, improving work conditions, and developing criteria for selecting employees. Educational psychology studies how people of all ages learn, helps develop instructional methods and materials used to train people in educational and work settings. School psychology focuses on designing programs that promote intellectual, social, and emotional development of children, including those with special needs. Sports psychology applies psychological principles to improve sports performance and enhance motivation. Other emerging branches. Interdisciplinary focus has led to areas like aviation psychology, space psychology, military psychology, managerial psychology, community psychology, psychology of women, political psychology. Psychology and other disciplines. Psychology is interconnected with other disciplines, including sciences, social sciences, and humanities. The image above shows the field of psychology in the center and many connecting lines to different fields of study and disciplines such as medicine, computer science, mass communication, architecture, and others. This image helps to illustrate the diversity and connections that psychology has with many other disciplines. Philosophy. Until the end of the 19th century, questions about the nature of the mind and human motivations were concerns of philosophers. While psychology emerged as a science, it still draws from philosophy, particularly in methods of knowing and understanding human nature. Medicine. Hospitals now employ psychologists, and doctors recognize the need for psychological counseling, especially in treating patients with cancer, AIDS, or physical challenges. Economics, political science, and sociology. These fields draw from psychology to understand micro-level economic behavior, consumer and savings behavior, decision-making, exercise of power and authority, political conflicts and resolutions, voting behavior. Socialization, group and collective behavior, intergroup conflicts. Computer science. Computer science seeks to mimic the human mind, especially in simultaneous processing of information. Developments in both fields have advanced cognitive sciences. Law and criminology. Psychology is used to answer questions such as how well a witness remembers an event, factors influencing jury decisions, signs of guilt and falsehood. Factors considered when holding a culprit responsible, appropriate punishment for a criminal act. Mass communication. Mass media influences thinking, attitudes, and emotions. Psychology helps in developing strategies for better communication and understanding the impact of media. Music and fine arts. Music can raise work performance, and music therapy is being explored for curing physical ailments. Architecture and engineering. Psychological knowledge helps in designing mechanical devices, displays and spaces that satisfy clients both mentally and physically. Psychology in everyday life. Psychology offers solutions to personal, family, community, and national problems. Psychological analysis helps in understanding these problems and finding effective solutions. Psychologists work in diverse settings such as schools, hospitals, industries, and prisons. Personal relevance. Knowledge of psychology is personally relevant and can be used to analyze and understand oneself in relation to others, improve learning and memory, solve personal and interpersonal problems, and reduce stress. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.